everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Cynthia and today's video is going to be a journal making video. So we're going to be creating a journal that is very much like the one that I'm holding in my hands. I wanted to give another go at creating kind of an open spine journal, and we're going to be doing that from a clipboard. So I've selected here some pieces of fabric that I would really like to use. They're kind of my inspiration for this creation, for this project. And this journal is actually a gift that I sent out to a friend of mine. At the time that I'm recording the voiceover, she's already received it. So here you see that I've selected just a piece of a clipboard. So it has a good thickness, but it's also not the sturdiest of clipboards. And you could also use a cereal box or like a crackers box, and to reach a little bit of a thicker thickness you could simply glue two pieces together so that it's a little bit sturdier. So here I've just marked the middle of the piece of cardboard, and I'm just going to be cutting through that. I only went through once, so it didn't fully cut through, but had I gone one more time, it probably would have, but I just used my scissors to finish that up. You'll see me also use the little indenting tool. Sometimes I like to do that before cutting through. I do find that it helps for thicker materials anyway, not for paper, because it can just rip it. And then I'm just cutting through. I hope you guys are doing really well. I am finally healing. My wrist is starting to feel a lot better, and I start physio really soon. So hopefully I'll be back to full mobility with it, and that is without pain as well. Right now I can write a little bit, but it does start to hurt as I'm writing. So I'm hoping that with some physio that will kind of go away. So now I have these two pieces that are going to be the back and the front cover. They are the same size, and they're essentially half a piece of paper, which is what I like my pages to be when I'm creating journals, so this will work out perfectly. So I'm going to start by working on the front of the cover. I'm just thinking that will be a little bit more interesting than the back, as it usually is. But first I need to figure out how I'm going to be layering everything, and I'm also trying to think ahead. And typically in all of the journals that I create, I like to put on the inside some dictionary pages as kind of just like the pattern that I have on the inside of the book cover. So I'm also planning on making sure that I adhere that before or at the right time, either before or after the fabrics. I'm not sure at this point, but right now I'm just going to start by figuring out how I'm going to be layering these pieces that I've selected and how I'm just going to be making them work. I loved this little fabric. It is so soft and just very delicate looking, and I thought that would be a good base for layering some of the laces that I had selected. This really pretty floral fabric is smaller, and I was thinking that it would be quite perfect for the spine. It is pretty sturdy, but I am going to be doubling it up with some canvas fabric. And here you see me cut a piece of that pretty white fabric to the size that I need it to be. I was really inspired by one of the videos that Cassie from Dust to Roses posted on her Patreon. That's the only Patreon that I'm part of, and I really enjoy some of her process videos. She shows a lot of the sewing that she does, and that does help me tremendously. So I was really inspired. She created this beautiful journal that she's layered a ton of pieces of laces on there, and so I wanted to recreate a little bit of that with this journal. And here I'm just ripping that piece of the blue striped fabric to the desired size that I needed, and just kind of placing it back the way that it should be as it stretched out a little bit. And now, because the fabric is a little bit longer, I am considering not cutting it. I'm thinking that perhaps I can just create a pocket with that, which would allow me to not waste any of the fabric and just make the best use out of it. So I know that it's not going to be long enough, and I will be adding a piece of lace to kind of make that pocket a little bit longer, but for right now, this is what I'm working with. And I really like the look of that lace at the bottom. And then I've selected some other laces that I'm thinking of layering at the top. I'm really quite happy with how that looks, but it does feel like there's something missing in that corner. So what I am going to do is, first off, I'm just going to trim those two pieces of lace because I know like the length that I'll need them to be. I'm also considering what piece of lace I'm going to be using for that fabric there. At the front, I am going to be using this thicker lace, and then at the back I'm going to be recreating essentially that same idea of a pocket, but I am going to be using this smaller piece of lace just to kind of create that unity, that a bit of that flow between the front and the back that are reusing some of the same elements. So I'm just trimming those laces just to make sure that I can start and sew the cover before I adhere it onto the clipboard. And here, obviously, the back side, the inside of the front cover is the same width. So I'm just using that as a way to cut for that pocket that will be on the inside. So I'm setting that to the side, and here's the encyclopedia that I use. So I'm just going to be choosing 2 pages to glue onto the inner side of the back and the front cover. And typically when I do this, I do try and find pages that don't have any like weird words. Just to obviously avoid strangeness. So I'm just gonna go in back and forth trying to find some words that I like. And for example, like for this journal, I knew who it was going to, so I wanted to pick some pages that would reflect perhaps the way that she inspires me, or something about her personality. So I just selected some pages that did that, and then I'm going to be trimming them to fit properly onto those pieces of clipboard. often when I do that step, when I've done one side, I'm just going to be using the trimmed piece to trim the second page the same way. I find that that's just a little bit easier. And I like to use my ruler because I just really like the ripped edges. There's just a certain softness to them that when you cut with scissors or with your little cutting tools, it's not recreated the same way. So that's why I use my ruler, and it's also very quick, so that's definitely a perk. I have recently rediscovered good old school glue. I just really like it for certain things. For collaging, it's really great. And if you don't put too much, that's typically the key that I find. It just does a really great job for, of course, like for this in particular, especially because my pages are very thin. Here you can see I actually applied way too much glue. So the less in this instance will work better. It won't create bubbles. So because I had just a little bit too much there, I did have to flatten it out quite a bit and get rid of some of that excess. Just by using a bone folder, you can really do that. But I just like the way that it offers the potential to move that paper once you've stuck it down, and it's also so easy to wash it. So that's something I'm really bad with, is washing my paintbrushes right after I've used them. So school glue is one of those washable things, so that's really great for me. And then I've just recreated the same thing for the back side, and just trying to place that piece of paper just perfectly onto there, and just using my bone folder to make sure that it's adhered on there properly. And sometimes I'll just go back with my little brush and make sure that all the edges are really well adhered if I've missed any spots. And just take your time with this step, you know, there's no point in rushing it. Now that I'm kind of done this part, I'm just trying to think, okay, what am I going to do for the back side of the journal, like the back cover. And I'm thinking I'm just going to be using the rest of that blue fabric, with the stripes. And like I mentioned, I'm going to be creating another pocket. And this time I'm just going to be using that thinner piece of lace to create the pocket. So now that I've figured out what the front and the back is going to be looking like, I am going to take that to my sewing machine and just sew these pieces together. And so here you see, it's not perfect, but I love it. And I've let this piece here open so that if the owner of this journal wishes to kind of slide something in there, she would be able to. As you can see here, my clipboard bent just a little bit from using some glue onto it, so that's really nice to take the time to work on the fabric part of the journal and allow that to dry a little bit, and then don't be afraid to bend it back into shape. So going back to that space there that I felt like something was missing, I decided to grab one of those really pretty white appliques that I have. It's like a floral applique, and I'm just going to be adding that. It's like just a little bit off-white, and it really went to pull those yellow tones in the floral fabric. I just really loved the way that it looked, so I'm thinking that I'll be adding that onto there. I am going to trim it so that it's not actually overhanging, and I'll just use the rest of what I trimmed off to create a tag later on. To avoid, I plan on I plan on gluing this applique onto the lace. So to avoid the lace being stuck onto the back, since I have that kind of pocket there, I just had some waxed paper in my hands, and I decided to slide that into the pocket. I mean, like, obviously the pocket is not sewn onto anything, so it's a little bit challenging to to make it slide into there. But I figured that any glue wouldn't adhere onto the waxed paper very well, so that would help me avoid everything getting stuck together with the fabric glue that I'll be using. And whenever I am gluing some appliques, I like to apply the fabric tack onto the applique itself in the spots that are a little bit thicker and won't really let the fabric tack show through as much. So I won't necessarily be applying any onto the very simply meshed parts. And here I just wanted to make sure that nothing was getting permanently stuck onto the waxed paper. So you can see here a little bit of where the glue adhered onto there. So yeah, I'm going to be trimming that off, and then I'm just going to slide that piece of wax paper back in there and let it dry for a while I focus on something else. So grabbing the back cover, I'm ready to adhere the fabric onto the cover, and because this is quite a thin fabric, I am going to be applying the glue very lightly. It has to be enough glue so that obviously it sticks good, but really trying not to create any of that like a thick layer of glue that will seep through the fabric. So I'm going on the edges first off, and then I'll apply just, I think, oh no, I'm not, yeah, not even. I'm just doing the edges for the back side. And once it's dry, I am going to be making sure that there is enough glue that I'm not able to pull on the fabric and rip it up. If it does rip up, I am going to be applying a little bit more glue to make sure that it's adhered onto there really well. And I'm just pressing down on the spots where I know there is glue, and then I'm going to be ready to fold the fabric over to create that pocket. The thing that is really nice with these dictionary pages is that when I create these pockets, I can just look at which word the height of the pocket arrives to, and then I can just apply the glue properly that way. And I'm just trying to spread it with my finger because I felt like it was a little bit too thick. And again, I didn't want it to be steeping through. Now that I'm done with the back cover, going back to the front cover, I feel confident that the fabric tack is fully dried, and so I can trim off the excess of the applique. And I'm essentially going to be doing the same thing that I did for the back, except I am going to be applying a little bit more glue since I know that I have a little bit more layers. So even if the glue seeps through a little bit more, it wouldn't be as apparent as it would have been in the back. So here we have the back and the front cover, and I still have those other elements that I will be adding to them for the spine, and also I need to start thinking about a closure. I have in mind to use that really cute blue and white. It's a piece of a thicker fabric, I'm not too sure. It's almost like a jean fabric, but I'm not sure. But it has a really nice weight to it. So here I'm just trying to get a sense of what the cover is going to be looking like. So it's a few days later and I've created all of my signatures. I've added some ruffles and I've clipped them to be ready to sew them. I've also created my holes with my punch hole, or my owl. I don't know how to say that one word. So those are ready to be sewn in. And how I am going to be sewing in is I've grabbed this piece of fabric. This is a canvas fabric, so it is really sturdy and I know that I can trust it. I do plan on sewing through both that fabric and the floral fabric. And so I need to make sure that I'm creating the spine correctly. So this is the tricky part, I would say. With the one that I'm showing you right now, I only sewed through the one fabric on the inside and I didn't sew through the lace that was showing. And this time I want to try and fold through, go through both fabrics, and as well as including some buttons. I've never included buttons in my like on the outside of my signatures, but I just thought that it would go really well with this journal, and I thought that the recipient would like that, so I wanted to give it a try. So I'm trying to figure out my game plan. What I am going to be doing is I'm going to grab a sewing pencil, or I don't know what they're called, but like a seamstress pencil maybe, and I'm going to be marking where my holes are going to be going. But I have to figure out exactly how I'm going to be gluing the piece of canvas as well as the piece of the floral fabric. The first step is definitely to glue the inside fabric rather than the outside. So I'm just trying to figure out, I want to leave myself enough room that right now when the journal is going to be finished, it is going to look like, not wrinkly, but like it can fall onto itself. But as you start creating in it and adding to your journal, it's just going to be expanding, and the spine will allow that expansion. So I'm just trying to make sure that I am gluing that piece on there properly, that there's enough glue, yes, but also that it's straight. That's definitely a concern. So I'm just doing my best. And I'm making sure that each piece of fabric is obviously going to be long enough to allow the signature to have the 3 holes that I like to use. So I'm applying a generous amount of glue, but also not too thick, because glue does seep through canvas fabric. And so I'm just spreading it with my finger to avoid that a little bit. And I'm just going to start by placing one side, pressing that down before I will move on to the next side. this is one of the steps that it is still something that I'm doing. I mean, it's the second time that I try, or no, this would have been the third time that I was making this, and it was the first time that I was creating pockets in the way that I did. But had I thought it through a little bit more before, I would have been able to secure my fabrics onto my covers, but leave the pockets hanging, and then adhere the canvas onto the covers before folding the pockets back onto it. That would have been really pretty. It's okay. I'm really okay with learning as you go, and the more you create something, the more you perfect it. When I create journals now, I kind of have it down that I know which steps needs to happen before another. And also every journal is a little bit different because you will include different types of fabrics and use different materials that will be altering the method that you perhaps use usually. So just keep that in mind. You know, it is nice to take the time to kind of think it through. But other times like this, I just felt like I was on a roll, and that I was okay with that. So here I'm just trying to place that floral fabric the way that I want it, but the most important part to me is going to be where it lays in the front of the cover, because I don't want it to take up too much room. I want the laces to kind of shine at the front. So the piece of fabric won't be centered between the back and the front. I'm simply going to be applying it to the front before applying it to the back. Now, the easiest way to figure out where to glue it on the back side is simply to lay the front and back flat, as the other piece of fabric is kind of going to dictate just how much room there truly is. And so I'm just applying the glue onto there. And just spreading it with my finger so that the glue does not seep through the fabrics too much. And here I have the front and back together. As the glue dries, it will become quite sturdy. So now I'm going to be ready to sew in my signatures, and I'm just looking here what it looks like. I just love all the ruffles and the creamy and blues and whites of this journal. It's just really making me happy. Whenever I sew in my signatures, I do tend to start from the back. I don't know why. I don't think it actually makes a difference at all, but it just seems to be what I'm most comfortable doing. And here I'm just using my little piece of paper there that you can see to kind of allow me to know how much distance to put between each signature. I am trying to make it pretty even and straight, as this is not a journal for myself. But of course, when you hand make something, it's, you know, it's never perfect in that regards, and I'm okay with that. So I grabbed that pencil that I was mentioning earlier, and I'm just trying to make a big enough mark that I can see it, but it's essentially invisible. And I'm just using some wax thread. I've kind of laid out how I would like to put my buttons onto each of the signatures, like at the back. I tried to think that through. And this was a really slow process since I was including those buttons, and it was the first time that I was doing it, so definitely a learning curve. But whenever I'm sewing in signatures, I like to kind of stick the end of my thread onto one of the clips just so that it doesn't go through by accident. And here I'm just going to be trying to go through the two pieces of fabric as straight as possible. I always go and check on the other side. The first signature is pretty forgiving, but for the next signatures, I try to make sure that they look pretty straight. And here I'm just going through, just going to be including one of the buttons. And I'm just trying to place it in a spot that I would like it to be. And whenever I'm sewing, I do through the middle, up the top, back through the middle, through the bottom, and then I tie in the middle. There's many ways to bind, and there's so many videos out there. I know I do include some of my process in some of my videos. So here I just noticed that the thread was not fully pulled through, so I am going to be having to readjust that button again. But because I'm poking through fabric, I'm just going to be using my owl tool just to make sure that I'm keeping things as straight as possible. So I'm just kind of poking that through, and then here I'm fixing the button. And then essentially I'm going to use the pokey tool to guide my needle through the fabric and my pages, just so that I'm doing it straight, or as straight as possible, and just to ease the multiple layering of puncture as much as I can. But like I said, this was a little bit more of a struggle than I'm used to binding through hardcovers, of course, so those are so much sturdier, and whenever I do one of these, it is a little bit wonkier and a little bit more attention to detail, but the results are definitely worth it. So here you see me go through the middle. Whenever I go back through the middle, I do try and be very careful not to go through my thread, especially with waxed thread. I hate it when it goes through it, and then it kind of creates this knot that you're stuck in unless you weave it out or you cut a piece. So I just try and be very careful with that and just pulling through the middle. And then I'm going to be doing kind of that same thing at the bottom to make sure that I know where to poke through the fabric. And you can see here, so my thread did go through the other thread, and the easiest way, if you notice that it's done that, is just pull your thread now. Otherwise you're going to be stuck with it. So I just am going to be rethreading my thread through my needle, and that is way easier than trying to deal with the aftermath of that. And I'm just adding one more button. This one I knew my needle would go through, so I didn't really have to worry about removing my needle from the thread. But it's quite a tedious kind of task to do. I would do it again, but probably not for myself. It's worth it when I know someone else is going to be enjoying it, I think. And so I'm just using my tool to see where my holes align and to know where to poke through the fabrics on the other side. And here I'm just trying to pull just enough, not too much, because if you pull too much, well, the fabric is just gonna kind of pull strangely. So I'm just trying to make sure that it's laying pretty flat before I secure by making a few knots. I am not going to be doing the other ones on camera. I think that would take way too long. So you'll see, yeah, there we go. You'll see the final results here and all the buttons that I've sewn in. I just love the way that it looks, and you can see here how I can really smush it down. But as you create inside the journal, there's just so much room for that spine to expand without creating the alligator mouth until quite a bit further down along the way. And I've just added some eyelets to create that closure and that little ribbon or thicker piece of fabric through that closure. And I'll just give you a quick flip through of the journal. I've created some ephemera for this journal, went to Angela, and here you can see the different types of papers that I've included in there. Very similar to what I usually include in my journals. I just kept in mind what I thought she would like, and kind of did a reflection of how I feel about her art and how she inspires me. So I tried to include elements that reminded me of her, and essentially her kindness, and just really how inspiring of a friend that she is to me. So I really hope that she enjoys it, and I know she started creating in it, so I hope that she's enjoying it and really loving to use it. That's always what you hope for when you create something for someone. And that's pretty much it for this video, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please do. I would love for you to. And if you like this video, just give me a thumbs up or leave me a comment down below. That really does help me out. I'll talk to you all in my next video. Thank you so much, and take care.